All right, let's go. Paul Stone, Jimmy Ott here, talking some college football championship Saturday. Some say, well, they don't. Why are they playing them and things like that? Well, if you're not paying attention, the two leagues that run college football, the Big Ten and the SEC, they still generate a lot of money. So you kind of follow those dollars, and you'll find out. Let's start in the big one in the Big Ten, and that's right. Clearly, the best matchup this week is in the Big Ten, not in the SEC. Number one versus number two. Both are in seeding. Could the loser fall below the 4 line and the bye line? That'll be interesting to see. I'm not sure about that. I think there's enough cushion set there, but also, who's it mean more? And right now at Bet Rivers, Ohio State is 4-48 indoors. Don't have to worry about the weather, so maybe a little bit more speed, a little bit more scoring. You would think in some of these late November, early December games that we've seen sometimes in the Big Ten with the weather. But is there actually a 1 versus 2 matchup where the number one team is in the emotional letdown spot? I mean, they do care about that Michigan game. They had lost to them 4 years in a row at a height in their, Ohio State's better than ever right now. There's no doubt about that. Think about that. If the 12-team format was 1 year later, Ryan Day wouldn't be around. Now he's one of the highest paid coaches in college football, but they look good against Michigan. And, and they start with the defense. The defense is just so good. I mean, and boy, not just at the college level, but how many of their starters who are eligible for the draft are not going to get drafted? Just about every one of them on that starting 11 is going to be drafted in the spring. So Ohio State 4-48. We know what it means to Indiana. Oh, Cignetti, and you notice how he hasn't been as loudmouth and promotional and that circus type of atmosphere guy because they're more established this year. He doesn't need that to draw attention and to promote his program. That was the best approach last year as they were the Cinderella story. And oh, by the way, when you go from James Madison to Bloomington, Indiana, in the first year you make it to playoff, that gets a lot of guys fired, a lot of coaches fired. See the SEC, no coaches fired after the 2024 season, 6 this year in the SEC. But I'm just wondering about the just the emotion here, the hype. I know Indiana is going to be ready to play, but damn it, that Buckeye defense is so good, so stingy, Paul. I just wonder about that. But I also wonder about, man, that was a big deal for them. They are told about that over and over. Hey, yeah, that's fine. Y'all won the national championship. And look, it means more to win the national championship than to win your rivalry game. Okay, I understand that. But damn it, that's still kind of burned more than a little bit. Just wondered about that Ohio State. I'm conflicted on this one, Paul. Ohio State 4-48 against Indiana.
Yeah, you're right about Kirk Cignetti. Last year he probably felt the need to market a little bit and to put his team out there and talk about the Hoosiers. But this year, the product speaks for itself, and everybody, I was maybe a little bit of a naysayer at times last year, but the proof's in the pudding, and the Hoosiers on the field product certainly speaks loudly for itself. I'll address another great points all the way through. One that I would like to, address and kind of state my opinion on is, will they get a bye, the loser of this game? And I think if you're Ohio State, if you're the defending national champion and considering the spot of this game and the situation, unless you just get your doors blowed off and maybe lose your quarterback or something, I think Ohio State is definitely getting a bid. I think Indiana, as long as they keep it within 2 touchdowns, I say a bid, a bye. Ohio State will get a bye in any case. And then Indiana, I think as long as they keep it within a couple of touchdowns, I think they will get a bye as well, being, 1 and 2 pretty much all year long with the Buckeyes. I'll kind of state this, and this is not, just a typical probably shared opinion by many, but I think there's a little bit of mystery still surrounding both these teams. Even though they've gone through the regular season, they're both a perfect 12-0. We still have some questions. And I mean, it comes down to scheduling. You've got Ohio State. They played the 37th toughest schedule in the country, according to Jeff Sagrin. Indiana, 56. Ohio State in their opener, it was Julian Sayan's first game, and he's a different player today than he was on August 30th when he faced the Texas Longhorns. But they won that game 14-7. They were in control throughout, but Texas cut it to 14-7, and then Texas had the ball at midfield. with 2 minutes to go. So that was a competitive game. But outside of that, nobody's played the Buckeyes within any closer than 18 points. Washington did so at home at Husky Stadium early in the year. Michigan did it this past weekend at the Big House. So they really hadn't been tested. And a lot of that does have to do with the fact they're just that good. They beat teams decisively. So certainly I'm not detracting from that. But you just look at their schedules and they haven't been tested that often during the year. You mentioned that Ohio State defense, and I was going to say that it is arguably the best in the country, but it's not arguable. I don't think. I think they're
No.
inarguably the best defense in the country.
Did I say arguably? Because I'll
No,
retract that. I'm
that
sorry.
was me. I was talking
No,
about
it's
stuff. I wasn't.
it's one of the best. It's one of the best all time because it's more of an offensive game in this era.
Yeah, it
So,
is. It
yeah.
is. Yeah, we see more scoring, but giving up, 8.5 points per game in the regular season, as you're alluding to, 206 yards a game, and just 3.7 yards per play in a Power Four conference. What I think's the second best. I don't think they're code number one, but they're right there behind the SEC. Less than 4 yards per play. I don't know how many defenses have done that in the last 20 years. Through the entire regular season. So just like you said, kind of a generational type defense. The Buckeyes, though, did, again, kind of to my original point, they avoided the upper echelon teams for the most part. They obviously hadn't played Indiana. They will this Saturday in Indianapolis. They also skipped Oregon, USC, and Iowa. So didn't play the toughest schedule. I would like to take Indiana here, but at 4, it just doesn't seem like quite enough, even though I made the number a little bit lower. But where I'm looking, even though they're playing indoors, and even though, as you mentioned, a faster track would seem to be more conducive to offense, I like the under 48 here, and I'm going to recommend the under 48. I just think as much as I like Indiana, as much as I respect what Fernando Mendoza, the transfer from Cal, has done there, transitioning as their one-year quarterback and a Heisman Trophy contender who could win the award with the big game on Saturday night. As much as I like that offense, this Ohio State defense is just so good. So I'm going to recommend here in Indianapolis on Saturday night, Indiana and Ohio State to go under the total of 48.
When we're talking about Ohio State, I have to say that. And Paul, one thing we failed to mention as far as it's almost like a bowl game because we both think both are, but for Ohio State's perspective, and I think, again, I know Indiana is excited. They want to get a Big Ten championship. I know that. But how much is Ohio State? Well, seeding. What the hell did seeding mean for them last year? I mean, they rolled through it. I mean, you think they cared that seeding meant the damn thing in Pasadena last year when they were up like 35-0 in a blink on New Year's Day against Oregon? So I'm just wondering about that in this whole thing. So I think there's a little bit of a look ahead possibility, as good as they are. And listen, when you talk about 35 and 56, I forget exactly what the numbers you throw out, the strength of schedule. That is not strong for a Big Ten team. In the top 3, no question, Big Ten's the best, no time. But 4 to 10 and then 11 to 16, it's not the SEC. It just isn't. And so that's why we see. I mean, they could only they play non-conference games. The SEC will do that next year, but they play non-conference games. That's 75% of your schedule and the strength of your schedule, and it just hasn't happened that way. Would think UCLA and some of these other teams will be better over the course of time. Penn State, Penn State crushes your strength of schedule in the season that they had this year. So anyway, Bet Rivers players who place the same game parlay of at least $10 on NFL or NCAA football games will receive an entry into this weekly Squares game. Winning Squares can earn up to a $50 bonus bet per entry. See the Bet Rivers app or website for more details. Speaking of the SEC, let's go down to Atlanta and play Georgia and Alabama in the state of Georgia. Well, you're trying to what means more here for these two teams? Georgia is comfortably in, but a bye is at stake. They will not have a bye if they do lose this game. And Alabama, well, I know they moved ahead of Notre Dame, but would they drop Alabama with a loss? An embarrassing loss would be more interesting, but they didn't drop SMU last year out of the out of the playoff by losing to Clemson. Certainly, Georgia is more respected than Clemson is, but should they lose by a couple of touchdowns or not? But I'll say another thing too. Don't tell these two teams played each other. They want to beat each other, especially Kirby Smart. Kirby Smart's the highest paid coach in college football. He is, he and Ryan Day. I'd have to put Kirby ahead of Ryan Day as far as just if you had to rank them. He's 1-7 against Alabama. He has beaten the hell out of everybody else but Alabama. In the one game, that national championship game, how different it would have played out if Jamison Williams doesn't go down with that torn ACL in the national championship game when they were winning. Georgia's 2.5 to 47.5. I'm seeing there's some possibilities of him maybe it going to 3 here, but I kind of like Georgia here in this spot because that Kirby against his former employer, who was on Nick Saban's staff, both at LSU and at Alabama, and now he's going against his 1-7. Man, that is a clear outlier how much he struggled. So personally, I know that Kirby wants to win this one as well, and that's what I'm going with. It's just a little bit of that edge.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting. I know a lot of people are watching this number to see if it indeed does tick to 3, and I don't think it will. It might touch some, 3 at a certain book for a short period of time, but the sharps, man, they are waiting in the weeds. If it hits 3, there are going to be people that that pound the tide and take Alabama +3. So I think it's probably going to hold where it is, but it's always interesting. You can never tell about line movement. Obviously Alabama won the first meeting between these teams. Defeated Georgia 24-21 between the hedges the final Saturday in September. That ended Georgia's 33-game home win streak, first home loss in 6 years. So a big accomplishment there by Alabama in that game. Georgia in that first game closed as a 2.5-point favorite at home, consensus 2.5-point favorite with a total of 53.5. I think Georgia, I'm not going to say that they don't want to be playing this game, but there's certainly some question as to whether playing these conference championship games is more of a benefit or a plus than getting the time off for preparation, a mental reset, healing those bumps and bruises and those sort of things. But I know they're competitors. I know they want to play, but I think, Georgia, it looked like they were probably going to be out of this game potentially. And then Texas upsets Texas A&M 27-17 on the Friday after Thanksgiving. And here Georgia is again in the SEC championship game for the 5th straight season. So very impressive what Kirby Smart has done there. And as you mentioned, that guy's a competitor. Kirby's just he's down in he's down in the mess, and he's an old timey crusty football coach. Even though he's fairly young, he wants to beat Alabama. From my seat, though, man, it is so difficult to distinguish between these two teams. Who's the best team? I just don't see a whole lot of difference. I actually made this game pick. I just can't, really figure out and get a good read on who's the better team. I'm going to sit this one out. I don't think I'll be involved. If anything, I might play the over 47.5. I'm not going to play that at this point, but I think it might be a little bit too low. One thing I will say, and this is not some great revelation, and I know, you're there in the middle of SEC country, obviously based in Baton Rouge. This might not be a popular take for those viewers and listeners, but despite having 5 teams in the playoff, and I think they're going to get 5 teams in the playoff outside of Alabama, getting blown out by Georgia on Saturday, maybe losing by more than 2 touchdowns. I just don't think a team making the SEC championship game is going to get left out by the committee. So despite having 5 teams in the playoff, so more than 40% of the field, I'm going to say that the SEC for the 3rd straight year will not win the national title. And again, that's not stepping out on too thin of a limb, but I'll make that prediction here. Whatever it's worth, that and $6 will get you a cup of coffee at a few places.
I agree. And we identified that about midway through the season at LSU. I mean, I'm at LSU. The SEC is lacking an elite team, one of those really special teams, and Ohio State seems to be that team. And damn it, Indiana might be second best, but Texas Tech might be that team. But yeah, I think there's it is so tight from they're not in the elite. The super elite of college football this year, but damn it, top 10 or 4 to 10. I mean, they got 6 teams that are right there. I mean, pick a straw, who would win on any given Saturday.
I was like, can I make just one more quick point, and then we'll move on. I talk people talk about the Big Ten all the time, just as strong as the SEC. Not all the time, but certain people hold those opinions. And the difference is, I mean, you talk about UCLA a minute ago, and I agree, UCLA and some of those other teams could be improved. But even if they're improved, it's not going to be what I call a losable game for the Ohio States of the world.
Right.
In that conference, Ohio State is not going to play in any given year under the current conditions very many losable games. In the SEC, when you go on the road against basically anybody, it's a losable game. So the teams in the SEC are playing losable games almost week after week, where Big Ten teams at the top of the league have very few losable games on their schedule.
Log into your BetRivers account each Saturday to receive 2 profit boosts for same game and standard parlays, with the profit boost dependent on the number of legs included. See the BetRivers app or website for more details. Let's go into the Big 12 and the Cody Campbell Red Raiders, baby. Yes, indeed. Texas Tech 12.5 and 49.5. Paul, you let us know about Double Eagle Oil Company and how the impact. I thought it might take a little time. It has been instant for the Red Raiders. And keep in mind, they were the first ones to have a plan and have a structure to their NIL distribution, their player payroll distribution. 12.5 and 49.5 right now at Bet Rivers BYU. We both had Texas Tech in that game in Lubbock. That was one of the biggest game day movers. It went from 10 to 13.5 where it closed on game day, and Texas Tech did not dispute. But revenge game here in a neutral site game away from Lubbock, no pomp and circumstances with game day being there and everything. And also keep in mind, BYU fumbled a punt deep in their own territory, a couple of turnovers deep in their territory, and still BYU held Texas Tech to some short field goals. I wonder if they're a little bit better. The other thing is their true freshman quarterback, Bear Bachmeier, looked like they said, man, let's let this guy go a little bit more. I still think this Texas Tech defense, it travels. It's going to be tough. This is a tough one for me, but I do think it won't be quite the route, quite the mismatch that it was in Lubbock the first time. Texas Tech 12.5 and 49.5, Paul.
Yeah, Cody Campbell. I hadn't seen him on any Heisman Trophy odds boards, but I think he might be the most valuable player in college football this year. I tell people all the time, not that Texas, nobody's going to feel sorry for Texas as far as financial resources, but if Michael Dell, who went to the University of Texas before he decided to go into the workforce, if Michael Dell loved college football as much as Cody Campbell loves college football, Texas would have even a better roster, and they might not have lost at Florida this year. They might be in the playoff. But, yeah, Cody Campbell and that NIL program that they have there in Lubbock is to be envied by most college football programs. BYU, when we look at the overall playoff picture and who's going to get in and who's going to get left out, BYU's the team that could be a bid stealer, in my opinion, if they were to upset Texas Tech as a double-digit underdog, based on the most recent – college football rankings that we got 2 days ago on Tuesday, the 2nd of December. They would leapfrog Notre Dame in that scenario if they do beat Texas Tech, seemingly eliminate both the Irish and Miami from contention and make the playoff. And I think Texas Tech, I think they're safe regardless of Saturday's outcome, again, outside of just a big time, 3-touchdown victory or more by BYU. And I think a lot of that's the fact, first of all, that they're number 4 in the current college football playoff rankings. And secondly, the committee recognizes that Bayron Morton, their quarterback, he did not play in their only regular season loss, that being the 26-22 defeat at Arizona State. So he did not play in that game. In this game, kind of like you mentioned, I agree with you talking about Indiana and Ohio State. I said this earlier in the week that this game means everything to Indiana. For them to beat Ohio State in Indianapolis and be the Big Ten champions, what would that mean to the Indiana Hoosiers? And on the other hand, Ohio State, which just beat Michigan for the first time in several years, they're the defending national champion. And if they lose to Indiana Saturday night, they're still the only team that can be the 2-time defending national champion. So much like that, not exactly the same. We're not comparing apples to apples, but I think BYU's got more on the line here clearly. So they, there's that point. And I think also they could be somewhat or maybe quite a bit energized by the decision of Kalani Sitake to reject the overtures apparently from Penn State. They had targeted him as their latest candidate to move to State College and be the Nittany Lions head coach. And apparently, Sataki has indicated he's going to remain in Provo. So that could give them a jolt of energy as well. But I'm still concerned that if Texas Tech, if they bring their A game, I think they could blow the doors off BYU again. The first game, 29-7. BYU did have 3 turnovers in that game, but Texas Tech dominated pretty much from beginning to end. So my concern is, Texas Tech playing their A game. And outside of Indiana and Ohio State, clearly the 2 best teams in college football at this time, pretty much been all year. Texas Tech, to me, is kind of the team that could be the fly in the ointment. They're a pretty well-rounded football team, and I don't think too many people who cover college football closely are sleeping on the Red Raiders. But this is going to be a pass for me, probably. I'm just a little bit concerned. I don't want to take Texas Tech land double digits, but I'm concerned that if they play their A game again, that they could beat BYU by a similar margin.
All right, I'm leaning towards taking the points there, and I got a Texas Tech future on to win the Big 12, so I'm trying to middle that as well. Let's move on to the ACC, Virginia and Duke, and well, yeah, we can spare all the nonsense about why Miami is not playing in this game and everything else, but Duke, the 3 non-conference losses, the whole bit. But looking at this game and this matchup specifically, 4-57.5, Virginia is the favorite, and this is a rematch. 6 of the 9 championship games Friday and Saturday are rematches. This is probably Duke's best game. This was a really impressive game. They played at Wallace Wade Stadium in Durham on the road at Duke. They doubled the first downs. They doubled more than doubled the yardage, 540 to 255, and lost the turnover battle and beat them in this game on the road at Durham, 34-17. Tony Elliott, we don't have to go about the story and the horrible, the tragedy and the murders of the kids, the football players at a few years ago, and he's kept this thing together. And now they are one step away. Even some people are wondering, well, do you believe in conspiracies? Well, we look back at that Miami run a couple of years ago, and well, the targeting. Oh no, it's not targeting with the Cal game with Miami there. How about the Friday night game? Well, the Hail Mary. Yeah, Virginia Tech steals again. No, that didn't happen as well. Some people looking at that because the ACC is afraid of being left out completely of the college football playoff after having multiple teams last year. I'm going to take Mensa. I'm going to take Darius Mensa here and the points. I think this line is inflated a little bit. The revenge factor, that was Duke's worst game as well. And look, Morris has been outstanding for Virginia as well. The ACC's had some pretty good quarterbacks this year, but I'm going to take Mensa with nothing to lose here against Virginia, plus the 4 points. I think this one should be close to a pick 'em as well. I'll take the 4 here in the Duke Blue Devils against Virginia.
Yes, a side note, Jimmy, is a younger man, actually a much younger man. I officiated basketball, and when you're an official, you can get cut by coaches. They can say, "Hey, I don't want Stone. We lose every time he referees. We're cutting him from the district. He's not calling our games anymore, or whatever." And it's a different level, but you are officials in college football are graded by the coaches and the athletic directors, and they can be. They can be marked off the list, I'm sure, by a similar process if their work is not fully appreciated. So it is going to be interesting because it is in the conference's best interest, obviously, for Virginia to win this game. So there's going to be a lot of eyes on the officials on Saturday night. These ACC rivals, as you mentioned, they played just 19 days ago. Man, I tell you, Virginia just blew the doors off of them, beat Duke 34-17. I won't go into many of the same statistics that you mentioned as far as doubling them and more than doubling them in total yardage, doubling them in first downs, losing the turnover battle 2-1, but still just being dominant. Virginia 12 of 19 on third down, 1 of 2 on fourth down, just really controlled that game. But like it would seem to be, I think a lot of square money is probably going to be on Virginia, and you being on Duke is probably the right position to take, because we're not just going to see a repeat of what we saw 19 days ago in Durham. This is going to be a different football game. Duke obviously has a chip on their shoulder. I think they're kind of playing with house money. I think they might feel a little bit less pressure. They do have Darian Mensah as well at quarterback, as you mentioned. I'm going to throw out an interesting tidbit here that I think is interesting anyway on Duke. And I wish I could give proper attribution. I don't remember who tweeted it or put it out there on X, but leading up to last week, this is Duke's situation, leading up to last week's regular season finale against Wake Forest. And at that time, Duke is 6-5 before they beat Wake Forest. Duke is in the position where they could, one, still have a losing record. If they would have lost to Wake Forest, lose to a bowl, they finish 6-7. So they're in a position where they could have, playing their final regular season game, A, they could have a losing record, or B, if they go on and win the conference, not that they're projected to be in the tournament. If they do win the conference, they still could. B, they could win the national championship. So they could either A, have a losing record going into that game, or B, win the national championship, which obviously I don't think they would do it even if they were in the tournament. But I found that interesting. Just goes to show some more of the oddities in college football. I'm going to pass here. I just don't have enough confidence in Duke, and based on Virginia's domination a few weeks ago, I've been around too long to fall for that. So I'll be on the sidelines, probably mostly watching Indiana and Ohio State as these two teams square off in Charlotte.
Well, forget all the circumstances and what they're playing for. But if these two teams were just playing on a Saturday, I would have to think your power ratings are pretty damn close between these two teams in Virginia and Duke. So I think you get that the disparity in this line is a little bit bigger than most people's power ratings. Personally, mine as well, because I think these two teams are very, very close. So the records aren't, because Virginia's pulled out the close games. Let's get to the last one. The MAC, Western Michigan, 243.5 over Miami, Ohio in the MAC. And I got to tell you, this is my favorite game. Bud DeQuan Finn, the quarterback from Miami, Ohio, he was a quarterback at Toledo, went to Baylor, came back to the MAC and played in Miami, Ohio. Pulled a Lane Kiffin after a tough loss at Ohio and bolted out of there, left his team. So anyway, they lost 24-3. It was a disaster in the first game without him, 24-3, one of those match in midweek games against Toledo, and they just couldn't do anything on offense. Well, they made another change at quarterback, and they inserted Thomas Gutowski. Man, he has put together two solid performances in these last two wins that's got Miami, Ohio to this game. And something about your starting quarterback leaving your team, and then you're trying to you figure it out. Adversity. It's all about sports. And man, two solid games, almost 9 yards an attempt combined in these two games, 4 TDs, no interceptions. I just like the path. I was ready to give up on Miami, Ohio, especially watching that first game against Toledo. I said, this team is done. They just can't do it. Give the coach, give the team, give this quarterback, Thomas Gutowski, credit. I'm taking the +2 in this one. Obviously, to win outright, it's a short number. You can sprinkle a little money line as well. But this is my favorite play on the Saturday slate.
Jimmy, I hate to do this, man. I never like to be on the opposite side of you, but we're going to be on opposite sides on the side here, as we sometimes are. And this is a rematch of a game actually won by Miami of Ohio, 26-17, back on the finals Saturday in October. But the Red Hawks are certainly a different team today than they were in that earlier victory over Western Michigan. And you mentioned the fact that DeQuan Finn opted out of the remainder of the regular season, reportedly to prepare for the 2026 NFL draft. It will be interesting to see if he is indeed drafted. If he is, I think it's going to be, in all seriousness, at another position besides quarterback, and that could certainly occur because he is very athletic. But Finn, man, in that first game against Western Michigan, which Western Michigan, I'm not looking at each of the teams side by side right now, but if they don't have the best defense in the MAC, they're certainly right up there close to the best defense in the MAC. But Finn had probably his best game of the year against Western Michigan in that first meeting, 260 yards passing, 52 rushing, just had one of his better games. Then he opted out, and, they started Hessen, I guess, that first game he played. And then Gutowski, as you mentioned, has started the last two games against Buffalo and Ball State. So, those teams not nearly as good defensively as Western Michigan. I think there is a drop-off. Gutowski doesn't have Finn's experience, athleticism, playmaking ability, in my opinion, those types of things. So I think it's a pretty big loss. Miami closed as a 2-point favorite at home versus Western Michigan a few weeks back. And now we see Western Michigan -2. So it doesn't really account for any drop-off at quarterback, and maybe there's not a drop-off at quarterback and I'm missing it, but the line's exactly The 4 point differential pretty much reflects the change of site. And then the total, I'm looking at that as well. It closed at 41 in the first meeting. And now here we are, 2.5 weeks later, and they're playing again with a different quarterback, and it's 43.5. So I'm going to play kind of uncorrelated, recommend Western Michigan minus the 2. One of us is going to be happy about that side outcome. And then under 43.5, I think we're going to see another low scoring game under 43.5 there in the friendly confines of Ford Field.
Oh, we'll see. We'll see. One memorable one that we went against each other was back in the summer with the Maryland over 4.5 win total, where it spread out to a four game. You ever heard of the term in horse racing, cheap speed? Well, the Terrapins, four wins with 8 to go. Just need to win one. Well, they lost 8 in a row, and it came under the total. So you got me on that one as well. I do want to throw this one in. You mentioned Heisman as well. Current Bet Rivers odds very close. Mendoza plus 150, Sayin plus 160, Pavia plus $2. I think they're going to be a little bit. I took some Pavia plus $2 this week. One, you look at the numbers, and he's had the better year statistically. He's had the better year than Sayin and Mendoza, but also lifted his team. And the other thing, not moving up one spot by giving Josh Heupel his worst defeat in Knoxville since he's been there. So, yeah, they knocked them out of the rankings, but they beat them much worse than Georgia did, worse than Oklahoma did, who are in the playoff right now. And something about voters when, like, well, he's done all this. The story is great. He's lifted the program. Take those 3 away from their team and see how big of a drop off. There's no doubt that Vanderbilt would suffer the most. So just saying, I thought that this winner, because it's a team award first between Indiana and Ohio State, was going to get it. But if it's low scoring, kind of 1 or 2 touchdowns for the winner, I think Pavia's got a real shot. And I think there's some value at plus $2, Paul, before we head out.
Yeah, I mean, it's just Pavia's had a great season, and it's going to be. I don't think he's going to be able to petition any judicial body to get any more play in college football. But it's been just a thrill to watch him the last couple of years. There at Vanderbilt, and to see him represent that program, to re-energize that program, and put them on the map. And it'll be interesting to see what they do going forward. But you're right. The fact that Indiana and Ohio State could be a low scoring game where neither quarterback necessarily is going to put up big numbers, that certainly could work in Pavia's favor. It's just going to be interesting to see how the electorate, the Heisman Trophy voters, and, having been I was in the media, the mainstream media, worked for newspapers in the past, and man, there's people who have votes on the Heisman Trophy.
It's unreal.
They don't watch college football every third week. It's crazy how those votes, they got to rein that in and start over with a blank slate and get a smaller number of voters and get people who are really invested in covering and watching the product and that type of thing. But I guess that's an argument or a episode for another day. But it's a 3-horse race, and we don't have this too often. It doesn't seem like in the Heisman. It seems like usually it's already decided, or maybe there's just 2 people, but you have 3 candidates at plus 200 or even more favorable. So it's they're coming down, another horse racing analogy, they're coming down the final stretch, and it's they're bunched together.
We'll be here throughout the bowls in the playoffs. We will have those all the way through the end of the college football season. So we're not done, because this is the end for the regular season. We've got Army, Navy, got minor bowls. We've got the playoff games. We've got everything. We'll take some spots if we see some value in some of the future boards as well for college football. For Paul Stone, I'm Jimmy Yott here on the College Sports Rush YouTube channel, brought to you by Bet Rivers.